Hello, and you're very welcome to the AA Ireland podcast. I'm Anna Cullen.
I'm Paddy Common.
Today we're joined by Jarlath Sweeney, who is editor and publisher of Fleet magazine, and also Joe McLaughlin from Cosy Campers. We're going to discuss a trend that has swept the nation over the past few years. Campervans, of course. Now, this episode is longer than usual, but it is definitely worth a listen.
AA membership comes with lots of great benefits. Breakdown service, 365 days a year, so you'll never be left stranded. Roadside rescue, we won't just tow your car, we fix 8 out of 10 at the roadside. Our personal cover means you're covered in any car, even when you're not the driver. Home start, cover when you're at home, perfect if your car has been lying idle for a while. To find out more, go to theaa.ie.
So, Jarlath Sweeney is the publisher of a number of transport titles, including CaravanCruise.ie, so he is well qualified to talk us through the campervan scene here in Ireland. Okay, well, Jarlath, you're very welcome to the AA Ireland podcast. Thanks for coming on.
Lovely to be here. Thank you, Anna.
Well, look, it seemed that everyone was kind of buying a campervan or, motorhome during the pandemic. And it seemed, even if you look at social media and the likes, it seemed that there was this boom. Was that always the case, or was it just during the pandemic?
No, well, it's funny. The whole staycation lent itself towards this move back to the outdoors and campervanning and caravanning. And at one stage, we had about 9,000 to 10,000 motorhomes, caravans or campervans within the Irish population area. Then there was a serious decline because the government, in their wisdom, changed the excise duty, and they pushed it from 13.5% to 33%, and that really affected the sales, particularly of new vehicles. With regard to the imports, they kind of remained steady, but as you probably discovered, majority of the imports were actually left on drive, and that didn't suit everybody, particularly if they were just touring Ireland. If they were touring abroad, perfect, all right, yes. On reflection, Anna, with last year, particularly last summer, and if you remember, the lockdown had very, very good weather during particularly the month of May, and people just wanted to get out and go to the coastal areas. And as you know, I'm from Mayo, and I have relatives in Achill, and we went down during the summer quite a bit. But I tell you, there wasn't a blade of grass down there that wasn't actually covered by a campervan or a motorhome.
I know, yeah.
And that has its own issues as well, because of the fact that that the facilities of these areas may not be able to cover everything that's required from sewerage and water and the other amenities that's required. And secondly, that the quality of what was actually on the road, I would have a concern about, certainly, because there was a lot of deals done through the internet by people, especially customers that may not be fully au fait with what they were buying. And with regard to the standard, I would have an issue as well, because of the various complications within the fittings, like the gas structure as regards for the cooking, and also for the electrics for the heat and the cooling and the showers and all of that. But in general, I didn't hear any major stories or any major issues. You also have to look at the reliability of the actual vehicle itself, getting you from A to B, particularly if you're touring the country. But it's that said, it's an absolutely wonderful way of seeing the country. There are two set really clientele. You have young families with young children, and I wore that hat for a while. For 10 years we had a campervan, and we toured Ireland and went to Italy and went to France. It's a wonderful way to see. It's an education system for kids. It's a great sense of adventure, gives them a great appetite. You sleep in a campervan like never before. I used to love it because it's a great way to switch off. And yes, the facilities around Ireland have improved quite a bit. And there are about 100 campervan sites. There are more developments with regard to developing these airs, as they call them, which are really basic facility just to park, change your water, plug in for electrics, and you pay a minimal fee and you move on. Whereas the others are dedicated campsites.
Do you think that we have enough campsites in Ireland? Like, I was in Donegal at the weekend, I've been in Mayo, Sligo. There's quite a few, but do you think that there's enough?
No, there aren't enough. And even before this boom, there weren't enough. So, for example, if you were an ardent campervanner, you were possibly a member of a club, and they would do some block bookings around the country, so you could actually plan your routes for the summer, and you'd be guaranteed an entry to these facilities if it's for only one night or 3 nights or 4 nights, whatever you want to do. With regard to what is happening now is that there's a lot of wild camping, as we call it, and it's not seen to be the best practice within the industry because of the fact that where do you dump your rubbish? Where do you change your water? And, you know, from an environmental point of view, it's not really the best way to do it. Okay, I may be tiring people with the brush, but in essence, there are some very, very environmentally conscious people out there, and they will bring home all the rubbish. But
it's not the case with everyone.
Not the case, because they just don't have the resources to store these, the wastewater and the black water, as they call it, and to actually replenish that as well. They have to go and try and find these things, you know. So service stations at various places around the country you probably see them pulling in, and I've noticed as well that some hotel car parks would have campervans on site, the air system is starting to be developed, but that only has to be done through the local authorities, the local county councils, because they have to put these in place. And then again, see, they have the infrastructure to allow for that as well, with the water and all of that. And for something like €15, you can do that overnight. Our local equestrian centre actually in Claremorris has done this, and they have put up the air system. They have the plug-in and all the showers and the water ingress and outgress and all of that. So for €15, it's a very, very good value. Whereas a campervan site, which has more, we say, structural facilities in place, that could range from €35 to €50 a night. Depends on the size of your camper, how many berths it has, and some prime locations actually on the site as well, if you want to see view and that kind of thing. It's just like your holiday apartment almost, you know.
Yeah. So look, Jarlath, going back to the beginning then, if someone, you know, there's lots of campervans and motorhomes out there, from the basic ones to the most expensive ones. Could you talk me through a few of those from the bottom up, so to speak?
Sure. Well, there are 3 distinct categories of campervans.
Okay.
You probably are aware of we call it the compact one, like the Caddy California from Volkswagen.
Yes.
Which is really a small van, and the back stretches out, and you can actually attach a tent onto the back of it, which facilitates the younger ones, shall we say. The older ones are like a bit more comfy. That moves on to a 3.5-ton panel van, which is like a Fiat Ducato or a Peugeot or something similar, a Ford Transit of 2-ton nature, as they call it.
Okay.
And that price element goes maybe from 30,000 to about 50,000 for a converted, fully integrated campervan that would have some cooking facilities, water facilities, but may not have a shower, might have an external shower, as they call it.
Okay.
So then you have the B-class, as we call it, which is a chassis and cab of a van manufacturer with the engine. So if you just have the chassis and the cab, and then there's a body built onto that by an expert company, more than likely either French, English, Spanish, and they specialise in actually buying the chassis from the manufacturer like Fiat or Peugeot again, or Ford or Mercedes, and they plonk their newest design of a body on the back of that, and that can accommodate up to 7 people, or can only do 2 people, depends on the design and shape and size that you want.
Yeah.
And that can again, it's under the 3.5-ton regime, and the reason I say that is that you can also drive it with your car licence, but anything you go above that, you need a D licence, like it's a commercial vehicle licence for drivers.
Yeah, we might get into licensing a bit later on.
So that can range from 50,000 to 100,000 for a new one. For that type of vehicle. And then you have the flagship models, which is a fully integrated motorhome, more than a camper van, and that's 100,000 plus. Again, it can accommodate up to 7, maybe even 8 people. It depends on the size of it. But you know, you're looking at a vehicle that is larger than the others. It takes a bit of getting used to with the actual dimensions of it. from people that drive cars and then move into a commercial vehicle, there is a transition required as regards getting your angles right, getting into these places, and also that when you're parking up, that you have to have your dedicated spot, and that is not, pressing out on another site and all of that. So yeah, it's more of we call it a premium type vehicle for a longer ownership, and also for more usage. And this is what I was saying earlier, Anna, that you have two distinct categories. One is the young families with young children, and then you have the more retired element for couples that like to just tour at home and abroad. And they would tour quite a lot, actually. The whole campervan, caravan, motorhome business, is seasonal, so you're talking about from March to September. But the older age group would certainly tour all year round, and they don't mind the cold because everything's there. They have heat and they have hot showers, and they can plug in and anywhere they go.
They have everything they need. So it sounds, just from talking about the prices, it sounds like there must be a lot of research involved, and it's important to do your research before you start.
Well, I'm of the opinion that to get the maximum use out of a campervan, you could use it as a second vehicle. And one of my regrets is that when we had ours, it was a 5-berth twin-wheel Ford Transit with an chassis and cab body, like I described, the B-Class. But it was lying there for pretty much 8 months of the year, and it was a waste. My idea was that you'd have a converted van, like a panel van, but you'd have 3 seats at the back with 3 seat belts, 2 seats at the front, and that you'd use it as an everyday vehicle, whether it's a school run, whether it's a sports run, or whatever you want to do. But actually you're using it all the time, because when you consider that the battery runs down when it's idle, and you have 2 batteries, you have the one that mechanises the electronics, the actual vehicle itself, and then you want this for all the electrics in the vehicle. So you have to keep charging that. Trickle charge is called it during the winter, because otherwise it'll go dead. So there are 2 options, and one is that you buy a panel van, a used one, and if you're anyways handy with your hands and carpentry and all that, you could actually fit in the panels, but then you'd have to get an expert to put in the gas fittings and also the water fittings that you need.
Yes.
for intake and outtake. So then from that point of view, it's probably the cheapest way to do it, but it's probably the most basic way to do it as well. And if you can live with that, that's fine. But a lot of people would enter it in that way and then move on to, would say, a more commercially orientated vehicle that would be provided by the particular brands that are out there at the moment. There's quite a number in the British market. They're actually Baileys, for example, and they actually do the whole business themselves. So you just go to them. There's another one in Huddersfield, Wellhouse Leisure. They do a fantastic job on the smaller vans, as in the Ford Transit. And I think they've produced just their the first 1,000 units in the last 2 years. And that is fully approved by Ford, which is very important as well, because you have the full warranty cover as well if anything goes wrong. So, there are many options out there, but the buyer, as you say, needs to do a lot of research. Then you have the dedicated retailers from Donegal to Tipperary to Ennis. They're all spread around the country, and just to visit them, have a look around, see what's available. There are 2 big shows in Birmingham as well, one in February and one in October at the NEC, and there it's just a haven for campervans and caravans. If you want to go to the Mecca of this is the place to go, and you would spend days just looking at the various types and the various ones that might suit you, because again you have to get something that suits your family and your needs.
Yeah.
It can't be too big.
So would it be easier then, instead of just going out and buying one, would it be easier just to rent one just to see what you think?
Yes. That's very good advice, and I've mentioned that to several people. Actually, I just got a call just this weekend about that. Due to the whole aspect of the whole staycation business, the prices went up for the rentals, but also there was a serious scarcity of vehicles as well, so that people had to really book in advance.
Yes.
But any advice that I would give is if you wish to pursue and invest in a camper van, take it out for 3 to 4 days. get the feeling of it, because it is quite claustrophobic now.
And see if it's really what you want, because you might be in love with the idea rather than it.
Yes, but also getting used of brushing up against people. I know we're so used to social distancing now, but it was within your own family, it's fine. But we're all used to big kitchens now and en suites and all of that. But when you come to the confines of a caravan or a campervan, it does take a bit of getting used to. And everything has to be done. Thanks to our Irish weather, we have some wet days, so everything has to be done inside. Now, a lot of people would have a canopy over the side of the vehicle, which would allow for extra space, especially for eating and that. But what I found was that it does take a few days to get used to it, even from the driving point of view, but also internally. And then you have to find your comfortable bed. You know how the seating area converts into a bed, and some of them have a pop-down kind of a suspended bed. Others have a bed over the roof. The one that we had that, and our lads just absolutely loved that, because that was their own little den, and they had the steps up, and they could just escape, pull over the curtains. So we didn't know what they were at, but they were enjoying themselves anyway. So looking at movies and stuff. And you have your TV and full satellite system and all of that. And when you go to the caravan parks, you plug in your electric, so you have no issues about that. And the water is always nearby, and there's various chores you have to do when you set up like that,
Yeah, and continuing with the research then, just the legal side of things and paperwork and, tax, insurance, licence. Yeah,
there are a number of areas you have to cover there, and one is that the local authority has to approve the vehicle first to get a rate of taxation. It's like a van or a commercial vehicle, but when you do that, then you state that you're going to convert it to a camper van. You have to change it from a commercial vehicle to an in one, which is camper van type, which immediately reduces the actual price of the motor tax. The motor tax is quite cheap in these vehicles, which is surprising. It's just over €100, and the insurance is also quite cheap, as in about 50% less of what we normally have in a commercial vehicle, for example.
Okay.
But that is only to use it as a camper van. So if you're using it for multi-purpose, like I suggested earlier on, you're going to have to declare that this is going to be used for other areas of transport, shall we say. So the local authority will have to prove it. Then you have the Customs and Excise to have to look at it, particularly from a VRT point of view, because it has to be valued. Mm-hmm. And then there's a VAT rate on top of that. So all of these areas have to be covered before it actually tick the box that you can go ahead and kind of finish your business as in the conversion and drive away and into the sunshine, as they say, But
onto Ackle Island.
Yeah, the revenue.ie have a lot of information on that, and a lot of the sellers of the campervans would have all this information for you anyways, to reduce the stress involved and the time that you need to research, because like you said, a lot of these decisions are spontaneous, and you want it now, and you just don't want to be bogged down with paperwork. The documentation point of view, there's a bit of work to be done there. And the evaluation, what I would suggest is that when you are getting it valued, that you have as less equipment in it as possible, because the more you have in it, the higher it's going to be as regards the excise, the VRT and all of that. And so, it's something that you must consider. But from an everyday use point of view, make sure that you have a spare wheel, for example. Some of the, as we know, a lot of the cars and vans nowadays have this alternative system, with the pump action and all that, which is really not very good when you're at the side of the road down in Ackle or anywhere else in Kerry, and you're trying to figure out what this is all about. And it's raining,
middle of
and
nowhere.
the kids are getting a bit cranky. And
yeah, you have a lot going on.
Exactly, yeah.
You don't need extra stress.
No,
so the licences, then, you touched on it earlier.
Yeah, well, it's fairly straightforward. Anything that's under 3.5 tonnes, it's your car licence will do, no problem. But if it goes beyond that, and there is kind of a thin line with the B class, when I mentioned about the chassis and cab and the body, because that is quite heavy in itself. And then if you start loading up bikes, or if you're starting up, kayaks and all that kind of stuff, and if it's not declared that is over 3.5 tonnes, you could actually get caught in a number of ways. One is that you haven't the correct licence, and then you're actually overweight, so you could actually be penalised for being overweight as well. But see, when it goes to 3.5 tonnes, even though it won't be requiring a tachograph like they have for commercial vehicles, you still have to have the D licence to drive it. And that actually can restrict couples using it, because the two people in the family may not have actually a D licence. So, it's a bit of a process then try to go and do your test and all that. So, just be careful that it remains under 3.5 tonnes.
Like, we did see the staycations and we were restricted to just Ireland, but if you have a campervan or a motorhome and you want to not only travel around Ireland, you want to expand now and you want to go into Europe, would you recommend left-hand drive or right-hand drive?
Well, it's what we did actually was we hired the campervans over there in France initially.
Okay.
Because we live a very busy life and holiday time has to be maximised. What I found is, and after my research, that it would take 3 days to get to Italy. And those 3 days your holiday's gone, because you spend most of the time in a boat or trying to cross land, which is only getting from A to B rather than actually being on holiday. So what we did was, for example, when we went to Italy, we actually hired the vehicle in Turin, and we went to Pisa and over to Florence, and Florence to Pescara, and back down to Rome over 10 days, and it was absolutely wonderful. Now, the caravan parks and sites, they're absolutely fabulous. They're huge. I mean, an average pitch size in Ireland would be between 70 and 100 pitches. These at 550. Now, the actual price overnight was €85, which is quite expensive. But then they had 2 restaurants on sites, they had swimming pools, they had football pitches, they had beaches. It was absolutely fabulous. And you'd stay for more than one night to get the maximum out of it. But from a French point of view, they have the air, so it's far more economical to get around. But then you have a lot of tolls in France, as you know, so you have to kind of work your way around that. But it's all part of the exercise, it's all part of the enjoyment. And again, there's so much to see, but you need time. You need plenty of time if you're going abroad. Whereas in Ireland, you can do a day or two, or you can do a Thursday to a Monday, and you still can see a lot of the country. And you can, if you do your search right, book in various places. From an Irish perspective, we are more motorhomes than caravans. But in the UK, it's more caravans than motorhomes. We've written about this, and how do you compare the two, and which is the best for you, and all this kind of stuff. Actually, we had a caravan as well as a campervan for our business, and Carl Doyle, my colleague, loved the caravan, because what he could do is that you drive to a site, you park up, and you go off in your car to various other sites. Whereas we loved the campervan, but we actually had to do our touring during the day, and then you go to your caravan park at 6 o'clock that evening, and you're parked up for the night, and then you don't leave until maybe 10 or 11 o'clock the next morning. But you're actually restricted then to your movements once you're parked up, because you have to do all the chores, as I said, with the water and setting up the canopy and all of that. But there's pluses and minuses. It's just what you favour. A caravan is far more economical to buy, and you can get very good use out of it. And the manoeuvrability, a lot of the technology now is like what we've seen with some of the trailer assist on the vans, that it can actually get a trailer assist on the caravan that'll actually reverse into a site for you. With regards to facilities, they have improved quite a lot over the last 10 years, particularly. The standards is increasing all the time because the customer demand it. If the Bush Telegraph goes around to say that there was one particular facility that wasn't great, I guarantee you that it'll spread around the country in a very short time, because, as I mentioned about these clubs or associations, there are a number of them involved with the caravans and campervan people, and they have rallies, as they call them, so they go around to the various places around the country, and they just talk caravans and campervans. It's a bit like a motorbike fraternity. They just talk what they experience and about their vehicles and all of this, and it's a great education system as well, because they learn a lot in a very short time. You have the veterans that would be able to tell you quite a bit about their experiences and the pitfalls and what to look out, particularly from a winter maintenance point of view. Because I learned pretty soon that you get a little trickle charger for your battery, rather than, just letting it die and then you bring it to the garage, you get it recharged and then it drops down again and all that. So for a very small fee, you get a trickle charger. And
you can pick up tips as well from speaking to different people. So absolutely. I think the main thing to take away from this is to do your research as well. Look, thanks a million for joining us on the podcast today. You've lots of information. So thank you very much.
You're welcome, Anna.
I also had a very interesting chat with Joe from Cosy Campers about the technicalities of converting a campervan, and he also gave some very sound advice for those starting out. So we'll have a listen to that now.
You're very welcome to the AA Ireland podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Tell me a little bit about the work that you do.
So I run a business called Cosy Campers, which nowadays essentially sells what we call vehicle conversion parts. So for the purpose of this, I guess that involves selling conversion parts to people who want to turn an ordinary everyday commercial vehicle into a campervan or a motorhome, if we can call it that. So that involves selling everything from cookers, sinks, fridges to insulation, windows, and everything else that turns a commercial vehicle into a campervan.
So you don't do the work, you just sell the parts for someone to do the work. Is that correct?
That's exactly what we do. The nature of our business has changed in the last kind of 3 to 4 years. If we can go back to 2006 when Cosy Campers was Cosy Classics, and we had a conversion company, and we used to convert originally old classic Volkswagens into campervans. Then we moved on to more modern campervans such as Volkswagen Transporters, Renault Trafics, etc. And then the last kind of 3 to 4 years, we've changed from being a conversion company into a company that supplies parts to other companies who convert vehicles into whatever it is they're going to convert them into, including campervans, but also to private individuals who want to turn their commercial vehicle into a campervan. And that's what we do.
So it was set up in 2006.
Yeah, a long time ago now, yeah.
And have you always been busy, or did you see a recent kind of boom in the last 3 to 4 years, especially during the pandemic?
The conversion side of our business was always busy. Over the last 5 years, our part sales have increased exponentially. That was really noticeable during the pandemic. Essentially, we were physically closed as a walk-in store, but we were selling parts online, both to conversion businesses and also to private individuals. And I guess for a lot of different reasons, during that time, campervan building became extremely popular. Because I suppose a lot of people were at home and not physically in work, and they had time and money to spend on something that maybe had been a dream for a long time. People couldn't travel abroad, and so the idea of being able to drive to beautiful parts of our island and see parts of the country that they'd never seen before was something that appealed to a lot of people. During the time also, I suppose, the likes of Instagram and van lifers with their photographs of people, opening their back doors, looking out at the ocean, inspired a lot of people. And,
so let's go back then to the start. And you mentioned there that someone might have a dream to do this, and they want to make that dream a reality, but they have absolutely no idea where to start. Mm-hmm. What would you recommend they do?
Like, we I suppose we sell parts online, which and there's information with your companies that the online store. But if you're somebody who isn't, I suppose, familiar with the process or very knowledgeable in the area, the best thing to do really is to call in. We're based in Greenogue Industrial Estate. You'll find us online, and you'll find Airco stuff to find here. But just give us a call, come in and have a chat, because it's a daunting thing to take on. You can watch all the YouTube videos in the world, and sometimes you're just more confused once you've finished watching them than you were when you started. So come in, have a chat. We'll talk you through the process, where to start, the choices that are involved. And then you can decide for yourself what works for you, because what works for the next person may not necessarily suit you, depending on where you're going and what you're doing and how you're using your van and who's going to be with you, how long you're staying. There's a lot of variables. So the best thing really is to kind of make a plan that works for you.
And talk to someone in person or over the phone. That's the best advice.
Look, we've been in this conversion industry, if I call it that, since 2006. So we are not now converting vehicles, but for the last 10, 12 years, that's exactly what we've been doing. So it's something we know inside out. And I'm not saying we're always right, but we can give an opinion, and an opinion that we've gained knowledge from for the last 12 years. So yeah, I think that's the best starting point for somebody who isn't too confident in what they're going to take on.
And if they're looking then at vehicle types and they want to convert a van or the likes, what types of vehicles do you think are the best, or what brands?
Well, I suppose best is a tough one. We'll break it down into two categories rather than brands. So, and I might use brands to differentiate them. But like, let's say we call a small van the likes of a Volkswagen Transporter. So, whether it be a Volkswagen Transporter, Renault Traffic, Ford Transit Custom, this kind of mid-size van, which are popular for a couple of reasons. Because people will use them on a daily basis. So essentially, they're just like a small car. These are the kind of vehicles that we primarily converted when we were doing conversions for that reason. You can have a practical 5-seater family vehicle which you can head away with at the weekend in terms of cooking facilities and sleeping and such. So they make a lot of sense for some people. For other people who want to have facilities such as hot water and showers and more storage, and don't want to be raising roofs and stuff like this, then the likes of the Fiat Ducato, the Mercedes Sprinter, the Renault Master would all be popular vehicles to convert, but probably not something that you're going to use on a daily basis as a car, primarily a camping vehicle. But then on the positive side, you have all those facilities that you're not going to get in the smaller vehicle, as I mentioned, the shower and the hot water and a flushing toilet and such, which are nice things to have in a camper.
The cost as well, a lot of people may not want to spend a lot of money on this, and they might be on a budget. Is it possible to do it on a budget, or what would be the max that someone would have to spend?
I suppose it's like everything else in life. You'll spend what you have to, and some people will be perfectly happy and like the idea of upcycling and recycling and using as many older materials as they possibly can, and that's certainly a trend at the moment.
Would you recommend that?
Look, absolutely. Look, there are advantages and disadvantages to everything. You may not come in to me and buy panels that I sell, and that's okay. But in terms of electrical components and windows and stuff, that's kind of a common place to start. And people will have various different ways of insulating vehicles. Again, what we sell will be kind of vehicle specific. People, you don't have to spend thousands and thousands. You certainly can. We'd have people who would spend, 15 grand on parts for a build. But it just depends on what the individual wants. Some people just want to have, something that will hold a mattress and somewhere that they can make a cup of tea and head off surfing on Friday evening and stay for the weekend in the west of Ireland. And that's what they want, and that's okay. For the other people, they want something that they can live off grid in and work from, and and that's another end of things. So it just depends on what level of luxury that you want, and what sophistication that you want. And I suppose we're all different.
And I suppose that comes back as well to having the chat with ye and finding out exactly what you want. Exactly.
Look, and we're not about high pressure sales and trying to get as much money as out of people as possible. Whatever you're into, that's for you. If you want to you put their various different systems in, we have lots of different options across the board. So, and again, depending on your budget and how you're going to use it, and there are options for most people.
So, fitting it out then, where do you start? Is it possible to do it themselves firstly, or do they have to go to somebody to get it done? And then if they are doing it themselves, what parts do you actually physically have to do first?
So I suppose taking for somebody to go out and buy a commercial vehicle, and then they bring it home and they look in the back of it, and then it can be quite daunting in terms of thinking, wow, where do I start? This is a big space. What am I going to do? And the first thing I always say to people is, get yourself a cup of tea and a chair and a bit of marking paint, masking tape, whatever it may be, and have a sit in it and have a think about where you're going to put stuff. Mark it out. Is what you've marked physically big enough to do what you think you're going to do in it? And don't rush it. A lot of people kind of get halfway through doing a build and go, oh gee, I should have put this here, I should have. So take a little bit of time, clear out the back and have a little look and see what space you have and what you need to put in it for you, and then go from there. Physically, the first act in terms of converting any vehicle generally is to clear out what's in the back, because if it's a used vehicle, it's had a previous life. So whatever that may be, you need to clear it out and start with a bare shell. From there, the next most important step is planning what you're going to do before you cut any hole, before you do anything else. And then you have a plan in terms of where you're going, rather than starting to do something and not really having a clear path in terms of where it's going to go. Generally speaking, then the next thing you're going to do will be to perform any cutting that you're going to have to do. So the likes of roof lights and side windows, electrical points in the sides, any of that stuff that involves cutting metal, because no matter how you cut metal, you'll end up with metal filings and dust and stuff, and so this stuff needs to be protected away from the bodywork and the paintwork. And I'm getting a little bit technical here maybe, but just in terms of the stage, this is what you do. But then we clean everything out, and then essentially you have a proper clean shell to start from. All of your bare metal that you've cut has been filed down and anti-corrosion primed, and then we can start insulating. So once we've insulated, then we can start initial wiring, called first fix wiring if you like. We can then start doing panelling and flooring. We can start assembling furniture, water systems, then we can start putting stuff in like roof lights. And so it's just step by step and as I said before, obviously we're selling stuff to people all day long, and we spend a lot of time talking people through how to fit components that we sell them. We do sell a lot of stuff online, and sometimes you get the likes of a window arriving at your door and you're going, well gee, what am I going to do here? So do pick up the phone and give us a call in terms of how you're going to go about it. Or as I said, if you want to call in and have a chat over the counter, that's also a very good way about it, because those few words of advice can go a long way in terms of saving somebody from wasting a lot of time or making mistakes that they don't need to make. We've made them all already.
Yeah, and you're in the business a long time, as you said. So the main kind of points I'm taking from that is do your research, plan it out properly, because, once it's done, there's kind of no going back. Absolutely, yeah. And take your time. Yeah. Go slow.
I suppose another thing that people think, or when they go and buy a van, we get people coming in buying a big heap of stuff and think they're going to complete this task over the course of a few weekends, and that's not going to happen. For somebody to convert a vehicle to a decent standard, depending on the size of the vehicle and what you're putting into it, you're talking about hundreds of hours of labour. So it's not something that's going to be done over the course of a weekend. But what can come in very handy, if you're not happy that you're competent in all of the skills required, to draw on family members or friends, and generally speaking, it's something that people will be happy to help with, and people enjoy the process. And what's greatest about it all is when it's all done and you're finished, or at least finished for now, and you get to go away for the weekend. You can sit down with your cup of tea, your glass of wine, your beer, whatever it is, and look out at the sea and think that you've done it, and it's very rewarding.
It is. It's an accomplishment. And go back to the vehicles, the height and the weight and the fuel type of the vehicles that you are going to purchase to convert. Does that make a difference?
Well, at the moment, any used commercial vehicle that you're going to buy pretty much across the board will be diesel fueled. The likes of electric commercial vehicles in that kind of size, really, you'd be talking about a new vehicle, and you'd be talking about hybrids and our vehicles with extremely short range in terms of electric. So that's not really an option at the moment. In terms of heights and such, the regulations around it are muddled. And it's absolutely possible to register a vehicle with a height of less than 1.8 metres as a motor caravan. The larger van, obviously the likes of the Renault Master, the Mercedes Sprinter, the Fiat Ducato, will have that 1.8 metre height. So to be able to step in and stand up is very convenient. For the smaller vans, the likes of Transporters and Renault Trafics and Ford Transit Customs, it's a very popular option to add a raising roof to those, which gives you, I suppose, the benefit of being able to drive into a car park on a daily basis underneath a 2 metre height barrier, but also when you're camping, to raise that roof to give you that added height space, and also then to get a bed in that elevating roof area. The elevating roof is an expensive option on those smaller vehicles, but a good investment.
How much?
Good investment long term. There are, dozens of companies across England from small sheds making elevating roof systems for these vehicle types. Anything that we would supply would come from German manufacturers if they would have TUV approval and EC safety testing. Wouldn't come with a lot of the English stuff, but the costs are significant. It's not something that you're going to kind of just throw money at in a whim. And a lot of the time it wouldn't be a job for a self-converter. It might be something that you hand to a professional to do. And look, there are lots of conversion companies out there that we would deal with who would tackle individual jobs like that. So if there were parts of a conversion that you weren't happy to take on yourself, or you didn't feel that you would complete as well as maybe a professional would, then again give us a shout and we can put you in contact with somebody locally who might take on a job like that. And then that includes anything from kind of electrical systems, windows, roof lights, elevating roof systems. So, whatever you can tackle yourself, there should be a professional locally who could be happy to help.
And I want to talk about that. You mentioned, professionals, and if you can't do a job yourself, that it would be a good idea to go to them. But it is a good idea to get advice on who to go to. And we talked about this earlier. We don't want to scare people, but should people be cautious? Yeah,
look, like anything, I suppose, if you're going to convert a commercial vehicle and you're not going to tackle the work yourself and you're looking for a company to do it for you, there are a much greater number of companies which exist now that didn't exist 3, 4, 5 years ago, and in ways that's a very positive thing, because it gives people greater choice, and it means that there is now a conversion industry in Ireland which didn't really exist 4 or 5 years ago. But also, like everything else, you'll have people who may be in the industry trying to make a quick few quid. So it's always wise to do your research. If you're going to hand somebody a large amount of money to carry out work on your vehicle, always try to see examples of their previous work, talk to previous customers, talk to other people involved in the industry to see who this person is that you're going to give money to. Because unfortunately, of the last couple of years, there have been, at least 2 examples of companies who have taken people's hard-earned money to carry out work and haven't completed it, and that's wrong. And I'm sure it happens in every industry, but it's just a warning to people to be careful who they give their money to. And seek advice. Absolutely. Look, and I suppose the vast majority of people involved in the conversion industry in Ireland are genuine, decent people who have a passion for camping and camper vans. So, in the vast majority of cases, there won't be anything to be concerned about. But always just make sure you're happy with who you're giving your money to, and make sure you're happy with the standard of work that's being provided by them. Okay, we'll leave it there. Look, Joe, thanks a million for joining us on the AA Ireland podcast. Okay, thank you.
If you'd like to read or listen to more of our content, go to the AA blog, www.theaa.ie/blog. And you will, of course, find us on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook and TikTok. Please subscribe to the podcast, and until next time, goodbye and be safe.